So we have the largest mining company in the world promising to take climate seriously and using really strong language about why that's necessary.
The world's dependence on fossil fuels carries risks with it that could be existential.
And then quietly dragging its heels on actually doing the work. It's a big deal.
A cache of internal records from within BHP, leaked to both The Guardian and the ABC, show the company's war-gamed options to massively delay emissions reductions in the Pilbara. That's despite BHP's own internal estimates suggesting that decarbonising in the Pilbara would cost it $7.5 billion. Now that might sound like a lot of money, but for a company like BHP, it's just less than 6 months of its iron ore revenue from WA. So just to give you an idea of the kind of projects that aren't happening, the very first thing BHP was going to do in the Pilbara was build a relatively modest 50 megawatt solar farm. That project was approved and funded by the board in mid-2023, but now has since either been scrapped or indefinitely delayed. BHP had also planned a massive renewables project, 500 megawatts of wind, solar and batteries, enough to power a small city and most of its operations in inland WA. That project was designed to start powering from December 2027, but the documents show it hasn't got any funding at all until 2031 at the earliest. One of BHP's biggest sources of emissions comes from its fleet of diesel trucks. The company had initially planned to electrify those trucks from 2027 onwards, but the documents show that despite this, it's continued to make major purchases of diesel fleets. At one mine site, BHP considered battery electric trucks, but went with diesel because they were cheaper, despite flagging this was inconsistent with its net zero pathway. BHP also dumped plans for an iron ore processing facility that would have prevented 1.7 million tonnes of emissions every year.
The scale of BHP's reversal shown in these documents is really substantial. It's a global scale polluter, the 10th biggest owned by private investors. It's one of Australia's most profitable companies. Despite this, it's seemingly balking at the price tag of decarbonising its Western Australian operations. That's a cost that it can certainly afford. Given the scale of its emissions, there's a strong case that BHP has a responsibility to act much more quickly in cutting its pollution. Among other things, that could accelerate the development of clean technology, and that could have a national and possibly international impact.
Here's what a former chief executive of BHP said about the company's decarbonisation plans back in 2019.
Our long-term goal is to achieve net zero emissions from our own operations. So next year we intend to set a medium-term science-based target for the decarbonisation of BHP's operations, which will reflect the goals of the Paris Agreement.
But in a memo we've seen from May 2025, senior BHP executives were told their current decarbonisation plan had a low probability of success. Instead, the memo advises 3 options: delaying to 2035, delaying to 2040, or doing nothing at all.
Why is BHP unwilling to act as it said it would? One reason could be the Australian government is implicitly encouraging it to continue on its current path. It has introduced a policy that requires big industry to cut pollution. But mining companies also get about $4 billion a year in rebates on the cost of diesel. And BHP is the biggest beneficiary of that rebate. That's a pretty good incentive not to invest in electric trucks as you've said you would, or at least to delay that investment indefinitely.
In a statement, BHP said it's taken huge strides in cutting emissions, was still committed to its climate goals, and had shifted 70% of its total electricity use to renewable sources. The company blamed the recent slowdown of decarbonisation on the lack of availability of battery trucks and rail, saying the technology just simply isn't advanced enough.
This should be a wake-up call. What BHP and other big mining and resources companies do matters. The BHP files show that deeper emissions cuts are within reach. The question for the company is, why not act now?